Villiers Island. This is a transformative moment for the city and the waterfront, figuratively and literally. So we're going to run through a bit of a vision for that transformation, some experience of what the future of this island community might look like, sort of including some of the plan frameworks and then what it takes to make it happen. So Villiers Island doesn't exist today. Villiers Island currently is what we know as Cousins Quay, and this is the study area we've been using through the design process. So just to orient yourself, here's the Don River coming down, hitting the Keating Channel, the central waterfront here, Cherry Street right here today. And today, this is an industrial quay. It was created almost over 100 years ago as an industrial area for making things and creating things in the city. And today, you can see silos, you can see some of the industrial heritage and the infrastructure that exists, including the Keating Channel. In the future, this whole place will become transformed with the renaturalization of the mouth of the Don River. You can see coming down here, in essence, creating a piece of land that is now water on all sides and therefore an island. So a remarkable opportunity and one we think is very unique across the waterfront. So evolving this from an industrial port to a connected, complete island with great park spaces all around the whole skirt of the community and creating 4 distinct water's edges, which are opportunities for different kind of public spaces, but also different scales of development and community. This is a site that is at a pivotal point, really the convergence of where the Don Valley is coming down, the outer harbor here, and the lake, and the city. So the eastern edge of the waterfront here, also the gateway and the portal into the Portlands itself. So the transformation, important in terms of in phasing and in placemaking, how that comes together. So a really important space. From a design perspective and a planning perspective, we've taken a number of critical inputs in terms of departures for the creation of the precinct plan. This is now an island, or will be an island, with varied water's edges that we want to respond to. And you'll see in some of the description of the characteristics that there are some places where this needs to be very gentle and very low-scale form, creating very intimate spaces. Other cases where it's much more important for the built form in the street and some blocks around here to have a much bolder presence and create a frame. We think there is a moment along what will be the future Villiers Street where it's really the central living room of the community, the main kind of gathering space, a collection of heritage, active uses, park spaces, water's edge, all of those things, and retail spaces at there. It's a connected island. It needs to be connected to the mainland of the city. It needs to be connected to the rest of the Portlands as an island. We need to think about how people walking, cycling, taking transit, and they're taking a car can get to the place, around the place, through the place, and making that a good experience. It needs to be a complete island with a range of uses. So this is a plan for approximately 8,300 people and about 2,400 jobs in terms of commercial or office spaces, but also retail, institutional, and so on and so forth. So both live and work, amount of retail, institutional, and community facilities, all within this discrete community. A destination island, so has been an opportunity identified before the work we started that there might be, we should think about catalytic uses on this island. Whether these, we don't really know what those are yet, but the idea is where would you put a place that was not only a local draw, but a citywide draw, a regional draw? Could that be a new campus, an educational, an environmental center, cultural center, arts community? And where might that be in the setting? And you can sort of see these 2 red dots speak to a couple of the opportunity areas we have been thinking in our design and planning those that could happen. This is also an island with an awful lot of history. It was, as I mentioned earlier, created specifically to be kind of an industrial port area. There are significant heritage assets on the island today, including 8 listed or designated structures. The channel itself and the western dock wall are all features that we need to have thought a lot about. How we could incorporate those and showcase those in this new community. how we think about the way you experience those, what you see from them, you see to them, you see beyond the island into views. And all of those have been fundamental departure points, those 6 elements in the design. Set of guiding principles for the island, activating the water's edges as a distinct opportunity here of having 4 of those. A rim of spectacular open spaces and a variety of characters, scales, and programmed to that. Reinforcing the island as a regional destination. We have all enjoy our Toronto islands today, and we can imagine this would be a different kind of island because it'll be more of a community, specifically a community, but think about that as a regional destination. It's a gateway, as I said, into the Portlands, and from the Portlands into the city. We need to think about the industrial heritage, character, and legacy and how to showcase those. We think about a whole range of ways of getting to and from as people, as pedestrians, right through cycling. And someone raised earlier, water access is also an opportunity here. Mixed use and diverse, a variety of building forms. Sustainability, as it always is in Waterfront Toronto, and the city's work is at the forefront here, so we're thinking about opportunities for a range of infrastructure and the sustainable community design. And the last one is one we can't forget. This has to be a viable, fiscally responsible kind of response to a creation of a new island and the infrastructure that goes with it, but also implementable in terms of actually staging and phasing it. Here's a view of the overall plan for the precinct. So let me just orient you a little bit. You can see the island. So this is with the new river valley in the mouth. Keating Promenade here, the Keating Channel here. This is what we're calling New Cherry Street. So part of what needs to happen, this is where Cherry Street's aligned right now. You can see many of the heritage structures that you're probably familiar with as kind of distinct placemaking along that. Here's the S-Rock silos. So the Cherry Street comes down here now for a number of reasons. Cherry will be realigned, partly about a phasing and staging, to this location, and then eventually will continue down to the south. This is Commissioner Street, which is here. A new other connection is proposed across Munition Street to connect up to this part of the city. You can see a variety of colorations, if you will, of a street and block network, which is very fine-grained and urban in character, but also has distinct types of streets on it. I'm going to go into that in a minute. The darker buildings are the heritage listed or designated buildings, and we've dotted in here the MT35, which is the marine terminal building that sits on the site. There are a number of plan frameworks. I'm not going to go into each of these. These are on the boards, and we could talk about them in more detail, but suffice it to say, we've been thinking a lot about mobility and access to, from, within, how people move around the island, changing the shift and making sure this is a very pedestrian and walkable place. That includes cycling networks and recreational trails, so commuters, but also recreational opportunities here, which are in abundance given the public realm around here. Parks and open spaces, we'll speak about a number of the opportunities there, and activity and uses. So all of these frameworks are kind of layered together. We then have started thinking and have some very carefully crafted ideas around built form. So built form are the kind of scale and the form of buildings throughout, and there's a set of 7 principles here. We think there's we take our departure point from the city's central waterfront secondary plan, which for the whole of the Portland says this is to be predominant, it's to be a mid-rise scale of development with some opportunities for taller buildings. So we're thinking about all of that. Built form in our mind, in the principles that have evolved for the island, includes varied and dynamic built form with distinct character areas, so there's not all one sort of form or one sort of set of massing. We think about creating spectacular and all-season kind of public spaces, whether those be the streets or the public parks and open spaces. We need to create buildings which frame and animate these streets and public spaces. We want to celebrate the natural and cultural environment here, cultural heritage, I should say. We're thinking about views a lot through this massing, and we have thought an awful lot around how and where to position taller buildings and how tall those might be. So all of that thinking and all of those frameworks I spoke about, layers together to show you and demonstrate through this rendering, which is a view of the future island, You can see very much an island in this instance. This is looking northeast, so here's Cherry Street, just to orient you, and Commissioner Street. You can see the variety of built form. You can see an intentional lower form up against the Keating Channel. We believe the opportunities for taller buildings are best found along Commissioner Street. This has to do with protection of heritage and transition to heritage structures. It has to do with where the transit stations will be. It has to do with the shadowing and minimizing the impact on public open spaces. And also has to do with framing this significant new public space. So when we look at it from a different angle, this is looking southwest now. You can see the connections to the island here. This is the munitions connection I spoke about, the Cherry Street connection here. Again, the skirt of public and open spaces all around here. The lower scale here against the canal, the channel. Mid-rise buildings predominantly here, stepping down slightly around Centre Street, and then finding strategic moments for a varied level of taller buildings along Commissioners. When we think about the scale or the height of these buildings, they go from everywhere for 2 to 3 stories here to base mid-rise buildings that are 8 to 10 stories with step backs planned throughout this and setbacks. And then taller elements along here with a number of, I think there's 6 or 7 taller buildings ranging from 20 to 29 stories. One of the things we want to keep in mind in this precinct is that despite the fact in plan it looks like a very large island, in fact, from the center of the island to this outer circle you see here, it would be about a 5-minute walk. So in 10 minutes you can get from one side to another. It's a highly walkable place. There will be transit planned and implemented here. So a streetcar running down here with a stop here and a stop here, then to continue over to the film studio precinct. However, within that 5-minute walking experience, you've got everything from mini park spaces, distinct waterfronts, shopping, retail, jobs, people living, community centers, arts, culture, industrial heritage. We're thinking about all of these things, recreation so this is the number, these are the numbers here we're planning for when we've thought about what's the appropriate scale. About 8,000 people and about 2,800 jobs is the combination. So we're intentionally making sure this is just not a neighborhood, but there are places for people to work either in offices, in stores, in institutions coming forward. So let me take you on a day through a life in Villiers Island. Because there's a lot of different experiences we've been thinking a lot about and as we have planned and designed and thought through this island, and we thought it might be most helpful to share it with you. I said a variety of experiences and the principles, so there are in fact 5 character areas that the precinct plan will set out. We're going to go walk through each of these so you can sort of see how it's broken up here. The first of this, let's start at Keating Channel and Villiers Street. So Keating Channel right here. And we've talked about it, and you saw it in plan, kind of talked about as the main living room, the kind of most active animated space, corridor street. And what's very interesting about the Keating Channel and Villiers Street is we really think of it as a public and a gathering space from the front of these buildings on the south side of Villiers, across Villiers, which has got a very distinct characteristic, through to some heritage structures, some new buildings, right to the edge of the Keating Channel, and the Keating Channel is water, obviously. So it's that whole composition which creates a very, very interesting opportunity. You can see from this rendering, there's a lot that can be going on and is intended to be programmed at space, retail, cafes, shops, opportunities for people to gather, plaza, recreate, get to the water's edge, and so on and so forth. Let's go into a couple more components of this. So on the promenade, there's a continuous promenade along all of this segment of the island. So a channel side promenade. This is really the only opportunity in Toronto you might have to have a canal side experience for those who've been to Amsterdam or some of these other cities who have structured shore walls. So a series of waterside cafes, opportunities to sit by, watch activity on the water. Villiers Street itself, today a very wide boulevard. You may know it very well. Really two streets seamed in the middle by a rail corridor. And so we're thinking about reconfiguring that. representing the rail corridor in some way, kind of as part of the industrial heritage of that street, but repositioning the street so there's an opportunity to drive and walk and cycle through here, but there's actually a linear park system or promenade on the south side of these buildings, which would allow for ample spill-out space, very much like the Front Street is designed in West Donlands. There's opportunity here, we believe, one of a handful on the island where you could actually have some sort of craft and boats launching or even accessing, getting to the island by boat and tying up and coming and enjoying this plaza space. The second area, Old Cherry Street, really is trying to showcase, the design idea here is trying to showcase and celebrate and reinforce this cluster of historic buildings and celebrate that, play that out over the entirety of the street. Now, I mentioned that the new Cherry Street will be here, very different kind of street, but it leaves a very interesting opportunity to connect from Canal right down to the Riverside Park along his heritage corridor. We envision this as being lined with commercial, office, and other employment type uses with retail at grade, and really thinking about, again, building face to building face with materiality right through, not unlike distillery, which creates a very distinct characteristic. At the top of the street, the S-Rock silos being repurposed and adaptively reused for ... We're not quite sure, but we believe there's a lot of opportunities, and that as landmark kind of structures, they're an interesting feature we want to retain. Could they be used for climbing walls or active recreational facilities inside? Maybe an addition of a new building facility, which be community scale kind of catalytic opportunity, could be part of this. We also want to look at the plaza space around that at the northern edge of Old Cherry here, and think about innovative water gardens, industrial type boardwalks, kind of bringing the water into the island at this point and kind of celebrating that. Old Cherry Street I've spoken about, sort of a focus on pedestrians and really celebrating that historic and structures with infill buildings and employment uses. There are opportunities through the island. This is an example of one where we're thinking about how intentional moves on the buildings, like setting this one back to angle it, would allow you from commissioners to look up and actually view the silos. So you kind of get a sense across the island of some of the industrial heritage and some of the distinct features here. Harborside, the third character area. This is the western edge of the island. Predominant feature here being a planned promontory park. There's that one of the vision of the catalytic use here, sitting here. This is really seen as a destination area, a park, and a whole set of uses that could be the front lawn on the harbor, if you will. So in the design of this end of the precinct, we're thinking about what the experience is like here, looking to the skyline and downtown Toronto, but also from downtown Toronto or Sugar Beach. What does this look like? So the composition of buildings, program, park space, and uses is important here. The catalytic use I've spoken about, and this is one of the key locations we're thinking about, nestled in Promontory Park, and to take a shape and architectural kind of sculpting it in that kind of very, very visible location from the center of the city. Thinking a lot about the transition between where the neighborhood or the development side of the island and the public spaces has been really important for us. So here's an example of that, proposing something called an overlook park into Promontory. So here you'd be a little higher given the grades, and you could look potentially out to the city in sort of that transition. Could that be some hardscape into kind of nice transition space over on the west side of Trinity Boulevard? There are opportunities along the water's edge for places for people to gather and sort of use the grade change down to the water for places for people to sit. You see this example from Brooklyn Bridge Park where, you know, this is sort of amphitheater style seating, but the show is actually the water. The show is the harbor. The show is the city. The show is the planes and boats and everything that's happening. So opportunities like that we want to make sure are expressed. Now, one of the things we've been studying, understanding that MT35 is a listed building from a heritage perspective. So today it had some images of it. The marine terminal is now being used for recycling of garbage and things and sorting of that, but it's had a number of histories. So if one of the things we're exploring is if that structure should be maintained and adaptive reused for recreational or catalytic use, cultural, other uses, a number of things are being thought of. We might rethink the edge of the precinct here rather than running the street like that, running it like this, as depicted. With the catalytic use as a new facility could go here, or you might put the catalytic use in MT35. Yeah. So, New Cherry Street, the fourth of this character areas. The main gateway, so Cherry Street here, just to orient you. This is an important street. Not only is it the portal into and a point of arrival into the island, but it has to have a function in many, many ways. So it's planned as a transit carrying street, so there would be a streetcar running along it, and you can see the stops here planned, here. It also will carry bicycles, people walking, and port will for a long time be have some industrial uses, so it needs to carry trucks and things like that. So we're thinking about the nature of the street, the bridge connection, and the arrival point. At the top of the street, there's an opportunity for potentially the location of a community center. This is an interesting site. It's one of the first things you see coming across that bridge. It has water's edge access. And so we're thinking about some sort of community. There will be a community center on the island, and this should be integrated with other development, other kind of uses, so it won't be a standalone, much like this example from Vancouver, but that's one of the sites we're identifying could be potentially located. I talked about the Cherry Street and its characteristics, and so the need to carry many modes along here and design it in a way where there's clear interface. It's not a piece of infrastructure, but it's a piece of public realm. We see a long Cherry, mid-rise, and taller buildings framing that street. This will be a wider street, so there's an ability to carry a fair amount of scale of buildings and mid-rise buildings along there. Where the transit station platforms are, we're looking at how you can spill that out into a transit plaza, which would connect onto Center Street. Rivers Park and Commissioner Street. Here we are on the southern edge of the island. This is one of the places we talked about when we looked at the model earlier, where we think taller buildings can be appropriate. For a number of reasons, helping to frame this space, overlooking the river space, there's very little shadow impact. And when you think about the impact of taller structures, that's something we certainly look at. So this is really an important boulevard framing the southern edge of the island. It will be a wide boulevard as well, so the LRT or the streetcar carries itself along the southern edge here, and much like along Queens Quay, as you see with that transformation, that configuration of an asymmetrical street. We need to think about that transition that's seen between this park space and development, so we can make sure there's permeability and ways to get in and out. We see there's moments for buildings lining Commissioner Street, mid-rise and taller structures to help frame the north side of the street, but also to provide some variety around Munitions and Cherry, in particular, opportunities for higher densities. River Park, this part of the water's edge, celebrating the renaturalized characteristic. And I think this is the last of the character areas, Center Street. So Center Street's interesting. It's called Center Street because it's in the center of the island. And it connects right from Promontory Park here, right across the island to Villiers Park. This is an intimate residential tree-lined walking street, so it's kind of the antithesis to some of the bolder streets that need to be carrying a lot of mobility infrastructure, Cherry and Commissioners. We see that it carries different characteristics across here to the west, closer to Promontory Park, would be lined with shops and retail at grade, cafes, other kind of animated uses. To the east, more of a residential character, but very much with a pedestrian kind of amenity level to it, with canopy, seating, and other that allow you to kind of be the strolling street of Villiers Park. So I lied, there's one more character area, Villiers Park. The eastern edge of the island here. This public space and this edge, thinking about being very community focused, the community of Villiers. This is the site potentially of one of two sites identified for a school, so it will be an elementary school on the island. The site here is a very interesting an opportunity to have a school by the waterside. We have one in Harborside. This is another one, and the school board is very interested in some of the programmatic opportunities there. Canoe and kayak launch. This is one of the opportunities around the island where we can actually get right down in a very protected way to the river and the mouth. Villiers Park itself, here's one of the few places. This is an island with a lot of topography. So this is literally one of the few park spaces that it can actually be flat enough. You could have a community-based active recreational field. And so that would be envisioned much like Sororn Park, or this I think is maybe Corktown Common? No, actually that's in New York. But the Corktown Common has one of a similar kind of space. So you can sort of see this whole edge and this relationship between the two. So that's sort of a range of the experiences around Villiers that we think create a truly remarkable opportunity, not only to have an island community, but a whole range of character and scale of place, making it happen. Next couple of years is around the flood protection due diligence and planning. Once that's overcome, river construction for about 8 years, and about 2023, so about 8 years, 8 to 10 years from now, we could start seeing construction of the actual community, and it's anticipated that would take out over at least 20 years time frame.